Hi, this is David Cox. I'm the designer and founder of Design DCA. We are a small residential design firm in Houston, Texas. I've been using SketchUp for our exterior design really since company inception in 2006 and a little bit before that. It's a great tool. Our clients love it. They enjoy seeing the full exterior in 3D versus conceptual sketches, which are great also, but just gives a little more detailed view. Even when we're still in the early conceptual phase, it's nice for them to be able to see all four sides, aerial views, etc., versus just a front elevation sketch. So I thought I'd put together a video of our basic process. It's certainly not a tutorial. I'm not explaining step by step. Just kind of thought it might be fun for some of those of you in the industry or interested in architecture and design, just to see how we work with SketchUp and how we design our exteriors. This particular project is a custom home design, a modern custom home design in West University Place here near Houston for a young couple. It's modern is my personal favorite and the design style that I'm most in tune with, so I tend to do it quicker and easier than other styles. Also because it tends to be simpler forms, obviously, flat roofs, etc. Often, not always, but this is what you're seeing here condensed in this 30-minute video is about 2 hours, 2 hours and 15 minutes of real-world time. But this is, not only the creation of the model, this is the actual design of the exterior itself. I had some ideas, some mental pictures, but I had not done any sketching or any other exterior work on this project prior to what you're seeing here in this SketchUp video. So we import our two-dimensional CAD floor plan, which at this point is, although still conceptual because it hasn't been presented to the client yet to get their feedback for the first time, this particular one is pretty detailed. We've got bath layouts worked out, kitchen layouts worked out, etc. But there'll certainly still be a lot of change and further development to it as we go through the different phases of review and feedback with the client. But we bring in that CAD floor plan and just start kind of tracing over it basically and building the groups of the home itself. We start with the foundation just like we do in the real world, and we work our way up. If you're familiar with SketchUp, you'll know that groups and components and proper tagging of layers is key to success, to be able to turn things on and off and see various views and work through the model without elements in your way, so to speak. It's hard to work on interior walls if you can't turn the roof off, so the roof has to be on its own group and tag so you can turn it on and off. And it just helps with modifications later too, because there most certainly will be as we work with the client and find out their likes and dislikes. If this were a traditional home, which we also do, we work in all styles, on a larger, more sprawling lot, the 2.5 hours that went into this model build and exterior design could easily translate to 8 to 12 to 16 hours, depending on size and complexity and frankly mental block at times. So what you're going to see here is really a pretty efficient one compared to a lot of our designs. I'll be periodically pausing as we go. You don't need to hear me ramble for 30 minutes, so just kind of wanted to lay out the basics of what the video is about, and then I'll pause and jump in when there's key things to talk about. Here at this point, I'm doing a roof overhang at a rear covered porch. Again, because of the modern nature of the design, we want that to be kind of flush and seamless, so that'll have an integrated beam once we get to engineering, and the soffit material will continue all the way from the thick overhang all the way back to the wall without a drop beam interrupting that. Here I'm thickening some walls. We'll do some double frame 2x6 walls here to give a total depth of 12 inches. That way the window assembly can actually be recessed back in the wall from the exterior. Gives us just extra depth, some shadow line interest, which you'll see later on here in the model as we develop things. This is a template that we use in SketchUp, which has all of the layer groups that we use and some just 3 basic standard views that we start out with. The top left tabs there, you'll see the one I'm working in predominantly through this video is what we call our default tab. Just basic line style, no shadows. Later on you'll see me going to what we have labeled as our 3D1 view, which turns on the shadows, kind of puts on some more sketchy line types just to visualize things a different way. But the shadow aspect is very important, even though this model is not geolocated yet, so we're not seeing the real world shadows necessarily. We still want to see how light plays with the elements and falls on things, and that's why we do elements like the thickened walls and the recessed windows, so that we're getting depth and shadow and more interest in the exterior design. And those are things that are great and easy to play with in SketchUp. It's a tool that I've thoroughly enjoyed for the last 15 plus years now, and ultimately in the process, as the project progresses, we do bring it into Lumion to make it slightly more photorealistic. I tend to still use a bit of a sketchy style in Lumion. We're a staff of 4, an office of 4, including myself. I'm the only one that does the 3D work in SketchUp and Lumion, partly out of selfish reasons, because I'm kind of a control freak and it's the part I enjoy the most. But I don't have the time to set up materials, lighting, views, etc. to a truly photorealistic sense. So I kind of cheated a little bit in Lumion and still apply some outlines and some sketchy feel to it, while combining it with their photorealistic objects, landscaping, backgrounds, etc. It gives a really, really fun look, in my opinion, and a neat presentation that a lot of our clients really seem to enjoy. So I will, at some later date, take this project and do a video showing that process as well, taking it into Lumion. Typically in the earlier conceptual design phases of these models, I wouldn't necessarily take the time to be modeling a staircase, although I'm just doing it very simply here. It's just not something we would normally do, but this happens to be a corner lot, so the front and left side elevations are street facing, and the staircase is in that front left corner of the home, so it's going to be a very prominent architectural feature of the design, and with some large windows in the corner assembly, and I need to know where the landing is going to be so that I can place my window sill heights properly. So that's why, taking the time to do a rough model of the stairs on this, otherwise conceptual exterior only model. There you just saw for the first time the switch to our 3D1 view, as we have it labeled, where it throws in the shadows and the sketchy lines. Just a different fun way of looking at things, and as I said, seeing the shadow lines is very important to a proper exterior design. For the windows I'm punching in now, If we're not quite sure of a window location or size, I'll just do an outline at this point. If I'm pretty confident of where I want it to go, I'll go ahead and punch the hole through the wall. That's a bathroom, actually, a high window in the shower. I was going to do it wall to wall, but when we look at it on the exterior, the proportions just looked wrong with that thin edge, so I shrunk the window. That's the great things we can play around with and see in SketchUp and easily modify. Made a little adjustment to the form there to make that a more interesting element that projects out instead of dying into the same plane. And then with that break of plane and massing there, that gives me the opportunity to apply a different material to that for some contrast on the exterior. And once we get to this point in the model, as you can see, I'm starting to add some generic materials. Nothing fancy, just kind of want to look at and consider where material breaks will be, what masses I want to emphasize, lowering the ceiling on the porch there a little bit on the entry porch for proportion. And now I'm jumping into the roof, which in this design happens to be a very basic flat roof, but you'll see here that I go through some various iterations along the way until I get to a point that I'm happy with it. Experimenting with taking some windows all the way up to the soffit here, which is a great look in modern design. Again, here playing around with the different material elements, quick and easy to do. So I decided I wasn't really liking the big, bold, projected overhang on that small pop out on the side, so making it a little more subtle as things progress. But then as I did that, the tall window is disproportionate to the overall space, so I'm going to, in a moment here, bring that top of the window down a little bit to just make it look more proportional, match the adjacent one, and then continue on. Here's a little user error that I caught as I was expanding that staircase window. You have to be very precise with SketchUp. Oftentimes, you'll end up with something off a 16th of an inch and just, need to really watch that and clean up those errors and mistakes as they're discovered so that it doesn't create larger problems along the way. Here I'm developing ideas for the space that is projected out over the recessed covered porch. It's inaccessible for any sort of usable living space, so we have to decide how to treat it. In my 1990s Florida days, we would have made that a big plant ledge that somebody would have put fake ivy on, but thankfully we don't really do that anymore. So instead, I'm creating a deep window well. We're going to frame up the whole thing and just create an interesting shape of light shaft, basically, that'll be projected through that window with the angled sill and the one angled side. So as things progressed to this point, I decided I was not happy with the two very basic flat roofs with consistent overhangs all around. So I'm considering a different idea here that I ultimately ended up sticking with, where we're creating more of an inverted L shape with a projection there on the front right side that will then tie in to the flat roof plane. A little more interesting. I wanted some of that contrasting gray material, whatever that ultimately may be, in the finished design along the front of the home as well, over the garage side, but I don't like making material breaks on outside corners versus inside corners, if that makes sense. So I did the 6-inch projection on the right side so that we can continue that material break down the side, do a little 6-inch wrap, and make that transition in an inside corner. It just creates cleaner massing, a more sophisticated look than a material or a color change at a simple outside corner face. Here again on this right side of the house, I decided I just wasn't pleased with the basic flat roof and 2-foot overhang, so I'm playing with the roof structure here to create a little different look. We'll have kind of essentially a small parapet wall on that right side with no overhang, just to create a solid block mass of that. What we're representing now is a gray stucco material, but again, that's still subject to change, but it will be some sort of material and or color contrast ultimately as we progress the design. For the corner window assemblies, when we have that recess, I like to treat the structural component of the corner as the same color as the window frame. It just makes it look like a continuous assembly. Here I'm starting a little wood slat detail over the entry porch just to give some material contrast, bring in some wood, some warmth to what could otherwise be a somewhat cold design. Plus the slats will just enhance the light and shadow play where we're already getting some interest from that tapered shaft that you saw earlier. There you see the magic of components in SketchUp. I made the first one a component, so therefore whenever I change any of them, they all change. Versus having, when I decided I wanted those slats 12 inches longer, instead of having to change all 30 of them, I change one and they all change. And same with applying the wood material. I don't use too many extensions in SketchUp. Those of you who are SketchUp users know there's a ton available. The one you just saw me using to put the wood texture on the slats is called Architectures, I believe. They've got some great material selections. The one you just saw me use to create the glass garage door there is called Windowizer. And we'll use that all the way around the home to create all the windows. I've got a couple for roofing that I use occasionally, which we didn't need in this design since it's a simple flat roof. I find roofs to be one of the most challenging things in SketchUp when we get into our traditional designs with hips and gables and various plate heights. But we did not have to worry about that on this one. Considering and playing around with different ways to break up this large window here. This is actually in the master bath. We'll discuss with the client doing it in obscure glass or doing an automated blind for privacy, but we can't do a window in one piece that large. We have to group together multiple windows to make an assembly. So at that point I had chosen 3 horizontal panes. You'll see here eventually just didn't really feel like that was flowing well with what I had done with the other windows and doors, so we ultimately come back and change that. But that's the beauty of the Windowizer tool, and they're not modifiable, but they're so easy to create that it almost doesn't really matter. You can just erase and make a new one. At times it would be nice if they could just easily be modified if we're doing a more traditional home with divided light patterns, to play around with different assemblies on that, but most of the time it's no big deal just to erase and start over. Here's the redo I mentioned earlier of the master bath window. Windowizer leaves outline remnants when it turns the window into a group, so we have to turn off all the other layers that we want to keep and erase those outlines to keep the model clean and efficient. So we're nearing the end here. I'm happy with the overall form and where our material breaks are, and putting on some last final touches, a solid wood front door. We'll probably put, another hour into this roughly before presenting to the client, just to bring in some basic SketchUp landscaping from the warehouse, and setting up a variety of views to show the client in tandem with the floor plan design. And then, fingers crossed, hope for the best that they'll like it, and we can proceed on to the next round with some feedback and ultimately get them a great home. Hope you've enjoyed seeing the process, maybe learned a little something. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And thank you very much for watching.